Good morning. This is the 10:30 meeting. As you noticed on the door, this is Crimes Against Horticulture, When Bad Taste Meets Power Tools. Wonderful title, exciting. Just an announcement that this is also being streamed live, and you can go to www.uaex.edu/live if you want to get it live. And if you're here, you're really getting it live. All right, it's a pleasure for me to introduce Mr. Billy Goodnick. He's at one point was a drummer, but he's turned landscape architect, and he headlines our Silver Anniversary Garden Show. We're pleased to have him here from Santa Barbara, California. He's an author and teacher. He traded in his drums, and I asked him if he was friends with Ringo, and he said he knows Ringo, and but he traded in his drums for a career in landscape architecture. Interesting change. Much of that resulted from his initial love of the bonsai and working with bonsai, and from that, the interest in gardening and landscaping. So we're happy that he's moved from drumming to this wonderful world of landscape and plants. He's served for more than 2 decades as the city landscape architect for the city of Santa Barbara, California. If you've ever been to Santa Barbara, it's a wonderful place. The sun comes up over the mountains and sets in the ocean. And in between that, you have a beautiful city with fantastic landscape. He's an award-winning columnist. He's a blogger. He's a book author, and later there's a book signing that right outside if you want to buy a book. And he's in demand as a speaker across the country. This afternoon he will give a second presentation. It will be at 1 p.m. and it's called Design Like a Pro, Demystifying the Art of Garden Design. And for those of you who will be here at 6 o'clock tonight, he will host a special walkthrough of all the exhibits in the garden show, and he will offer his insights on design issues for each of those garden exhibits, and there are a lot of garden exhibits. So that will be a fascinating chance for you to get to hear Billy's personal interpretation of some pluses and minuses in the various exhibits that are in the garden show. So you can also again attend the book signing following this presentation. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome Billy.
Wow, can't wait to hear what I have to say. And first, everybody smile. Have to prove to my wife I'm not in Cancun. There we go, okay, proof. And for everybody watching me on TV, hi, you got a good shot of my nostril hairs. Thank you all for coming, for being here to kick everything off. There's a lot in store for you when you make it down to the floor and see the garden show, but for now I've got a captive audience and I'm going to indoctrinate you all. This Crimes Against Horticulture is kind of a ruse to get you into thinking about sustainability in your own garden. So I hope you come away with a couple of chuckles, your endorphin level goes up, always does, and there's a contest at the end, so get your snarkiness I'll give you some examples. Get your snarkiness all tuned up, and you might go home with your own mini roll of Crimes Against Horticulture tape, which you go out in the middle of the night to your neighbor's property, and I don't have to tell you anything else, and you did not hear that from me. I've got some numbers of some bail bonds people here in town, so we're good. Okay, let's get rolling. Crimes Against Horticulture, when bad taste needs power tools. You've seen it, right? Shrubs pruned as hockey pucks and pancreas and whatever other shape comes up, but we'll just sort of roll from there. This is our motto. I can't pronounce it. Somebody who was a Latin teacher composed this for me, but you can see the cross chainsaws. It says in Latin, I cut, therefore I am. And that seems to be what drives a whole lot of people. I just read somewhere you're supposed to put your book plug at the beginning of the talk to sort of set the mood, and then again at the end. So you're going to see this again. But there's a lot of good stuff going on here. Billy delivers the most laid-back, user-friendly, entertaining garden advice you'll ever read. Invite him into your backyard now. I tell people it says New York Times best-selling author on my book. And it does on the back, but it refers to Amy Stewart, who wrote Wicked Plants. Anybody here read Wicked Plants? Wonderful book. Check it out after you buy my book. Okay, there's only 302 shopping days till Christmas, so you want to keep that in mind. And some guy at Walmart told me it's a book that's equally at home on the coffee table, the nightstand, or the porcelain tank. So wherever you like to read, this one's for you. And if you have a chance, go over to Amazon after you buy the book, leave a marvelous review. Okay, let's get down to it. A little bit of historical information. This is the home where the person who invented the QWERTY typewriter keyboard lived, and that was their idea of how it all got inspired. Okay, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, but it's a real word that means the fear or phobia of being touched, and it seems to describe a lot of the pruning that we see out there. Like loropetalums turned into little Altoid mints, perfectly separated from their partners because we don't want the plants to touch. Or this sort of thing where one English lavender is stuck between these other shrubs, but there's this wonderful space in between, so they don't actually have to get too close to each other. Okay, there's all kinds of stuff out there. These are the famous California redwoods up in the Bay Area, and not too far from there, somebody decided they needed just a little bit of help. Yeah, anybody here good at doing math in your head? Okay, the question is does 1/2 tree plus 1/2 tree actually equal a tree? We're not quite sure. I know we missed Valentine's Day, but what could be a nicer gift for your loved one than matching toilet bowl scrubbers? Yes, they're so cute when they're puppies, right? We buy a little plant that just looks great at the nursery, and you just don't pay attention to the tag in there. Nobody's really telling the truth about that. So you put them about 6 inches from the walkway, and when your guests arrive, well, actually what we should have is right down there at the bottom a little, like an umbrella stand, except it's filled with machetes, so you can make your way through to the front. Okay, there's some here that just kind of leave me speechless. Out in Santa Barbara, we have a lot of olive trees. It's kind of a Mediterranean climate. I'm driving my car up the road, and I see this, lock up the brakes, pull over to the side. I trespass, I go up on the property, and I'm looking for that pull string in the lamp to turn on the reading lamp, you know, the ones that sit behind the couch. Nothing there. Oh, good, we're of an age here where we remember the play Hair. So this is when the moon is in the 7th house, and junipers align with Mars. That's another olive tree back there. You'd never know. You've all heard of plumber's butt, right? This is gardener's crack. And right down there is a sprinkler. And some really intelligent plant janitor decided, well, if I cut this little V here, the irrigation's just going to work perfectly. No bet, it's a block from my house, and when the sprinkler comes on, it runs right into the Great Wall of China, and all the water just sort of runs down the street. If France ever declares war on the United States, it's because of what somebody did to this French lavender here. It's sort of like a Barca lounger and an aromatherapy massage chair. I don't know quite what it is, but I warn you not to sit on this bareback. This kills me. That is one hedge. And the guy on the left is a little bit, shall we say, anal retentive and into keeping things neat and pretty. And the other guy on the right says, I don't care, you know, let it grow. Same plant. Then there's what happens when you really pay no attention to how big trees get and what their roots want to do, and you put them in a city sidewalk. And it's great for the skateboarders and not so great for people who like their teeth. Okay, now we're getting into the adult content here. This is the 50 Shades of Bondage. We don't want the plants getting away, and we certainly don't want them achieving anything resembling a natural shape. This is equisetum or horsetail reed. This is asparagus fern. And somebody at this sushi restaurant decides that, well, nobody's really going to see the nylon ties that came with the newspaper delivery, so we'll just tie these plants up so they look nice and neat and clean. Then there's the celebrity-inspired pruning, another favorite plant. Do we have asparagus fern around here? Asparagus Myers, great, you're familiar with this. Well, you turn it into a box. You go away, you come back a month later on your gardening route, and a few of the sprigs have decided to break free. And I was trying to remember who it reminded me of, and it's Sideshow Bob from The Simpsons. Speaks for itself. You got to bring the right tools or just leave space for them. And another celebrity it reminded me of from the... Closer to home. Now, I was going to solicit some real Arkansas crimes against horticulture, and I didn't have the time. So these are from my talk in Virginia, and they say y'all also, so it's all the same. It's like all the stuff on this side of the world. It's like Arkansas, Delaware, Massachusetts. You're all alike to me. Anyway, some nice ones, and so that nobody would mess with the tree, they put the concertina wire around the base. Don't want anybody changing it. There's all the utility companies that clear the lines, and really I'm not sure who's more to blame or what came first, the utility lines or somebody planting a tree underneath saying, oh, it's going to be okay, or if the lines came in afterwards. But I'm still on the fence on these things. Better to have some foliage and some green, but really, do we want to look at this? A few more nice ones. Fortunately, the trees are placed in order to minimize the massiveness of the architecture here. Doing a wonderful job. And that doesn't show up well on the screen, but see, this shows I'm not totally against pruning. There's some places where you can have a little bit of fun with it. Okay, so my guess is that somebody who writes apps for the iPhone came up with a random form generator, and before the gardener gets out of the truck, they sort of shake it, one of those sorts of things, and they come up with a random form. And today it was spheres. So that leads to my contention. Make a meatball, go to jail. Okay? Now, I'll give a little bit of grace here. If you have a real formal garden, using plants in geometric shapes, okay, you have my blessing. You will not see your photographs up here at one of my next talks, so you're off the hook. So did you see the headlines recently? SMS is the cause of CAH. I'll decode that for you. Saturday morning syndrome leads to crimes against horticulture. You know what Saturday morning syndrome is? Beautiful day, you've just come from Starbucks, you got your latte, your scone, you're driving past the nursery, you go, I think I'll stop in today. And what does any smart retailer do who knows about merchandising? What's right there at the gate as you come in? All that amazing stuff. You know when you scratch your dog, there's that involuntary, same thing happens to you. Somehow the plant appears in the back seat of your car, it's seat belted in, you're driving home 3 miles an hour, waving everyone around. I got gardenias in the back, come around, okay. So, and then you go home and you recite the 5 most dangerous words in landscape design, and they are, where do I put this? Okay, show of hands. People who have bought a plant just cause, oh, shiny. And we take it home and you go looking around the garden, you go, where do I put, oh, there's a space. Doesn't matter how big the plant gets, whether it wants sun, shade, heavy soil, light soil, mild pH, high pH, whatever. There's a space, that's where the plant goes, and that's what leads to this stuff. So my fundamental question, is this acceptable? Do we really need to look at this stuff, and what can we do about it? So I'm going to get a little more serious here. Yeah, right. And we'll go on. So this is my basic touchstone. I think every garden, tell me if you agree, every garden needs to be beautiful. Raise your hand if your garden's too beautiful. I have some consultants I can send your way. They have pruning shears and they can take it down a notch. Okay, it also needs to be usable, and this is what my book is all about. The design process for me when I meet a client starts with the question, what do you want to be able to do when you go outside? And granted, there's people for whom their garden is just about making it pretty all the time and getting the flowers to bloom and all that. Bless you, that's fine. But most of us are paying property taxes on a whole lot of area, and we may as well get something back out of it. I've got a little bit of a difference being on the West Coast. We can live outside pretty much 365 days a year, except leap year. Is this a leap year? I don't know. We'll keep going. So I think gardens need to be usable. When you go outside, it should be an extension of your home. And the last thing is we all have an obligation to make it as sustainable as possible, and we'll talk about that real briefly. So when we talk about beauty, we're talking about color. We're talking about appealing to all the senses. Fragrance, tactile sensations, movement through the garden. All of that is important, and we want to focus as we're designing our gardens. Sound of water, beautiful leaves. Okay, but we also want it to be usable. A place to grow food, a place to graze your pot-bellied yak. Oh, you guys are still doing chickens, huh? It's a West Coast thing. It's coming over. You know, you can milk the yak and get yak butter and churn it, and you know, all that sort of stuff. For your Tibetan cuisine, right? We're all cooking Tibetan these days. Outdoor spaces for chilling with the family, looking at the night sky, all that sort of stuff. When we go outside, let's have an opportunity to live out there as well. And the last section, the last of my touchstones is make it as sustainable as possible. Use native plants or locally appropriate plants that want to grow here, plants that don't have to be on life support in order to give you what you're asking of them. Using recycled materials. That wall on the upper right is recycled concrete, but beautifully set to look like flagstone. It's not putting in lawns in stupid places like a 45-degree south-facing slope where you can't water, you can't mow, etc. And trying to stay away from the power tools as much as possible. There's a whole lot of reasons for that. So do we agree gardens can be beautiful, useful, sustainable? Great. So here's my mission. Get your attention. Check that one off. Okay, I'm trying to raise the bar in terms of your design expectations. I want you all to come out of here today a little bit better designer, a little bit more confident. Provide you some tools to do that. I'm looking over here because I can't see my screen over here. And to get a few chuckles. Excuse me 1 second. Water break. Hi folks back home on the live stream. Am I live now? They're watching me drink water. It's very exciting. So that's the rest of my mission. Maybe if I can, try to take over the world. So a little bit of my philosophy. Number one, use shock and awe in order to get people's attention. These lovely little haystacks here are a red form. Excuse me, I do have a little bug in my throat. Chat amongst yourselves. That's fountain grass. Some guys on the road crew were just a little bit busy. Had a little bit too much time. Okay, I think we all need to take a horticultural Hippocratic oath. Doctors, Hippocratic oath, do no harm. I think it's the same thing when we're out in the garden. We want to design and maintain our gardens in a way that does as little harm as possible, both to the landscape that we look at as well as the environment around us. In the professional world, you've heard of LEED certified buildings by now. Platinum, these are buildings that use the least energy, create the fewest byproducts, all that sort of stuff. It's a very conscientious form of design. Well, the same thing is happening now in landscape architecture, mostly at the professional level and for larger institutional type designs, but some very good points here in terms of how we design and maintain our gardens. Okay, we're trying to stay away from having to pull in crop dusters to take care of a couple of aphids on our roses in the springtime. We need to protect our soil, keep it from eroding, losing precious topsoil. Lose our dependence on fossil fuels and all the power tools that we have, the chemical fertilizers, that sort of stuff. There's natural ways of achieving the same sort of goals, and certainly trying to reduce the amount of green waste that we create. And when you put in plants that want to be the size of an entire zip code and prune them constantly to keep them in check, there's a lot of waste and things, unless you're composting, in which case you're doing a great job. Okay, my favorite, ignorance causes fugliness. If you just don't understand what you're doing in the garden and you're using the wrong plants in places, the result is often just going in, hacking, and creating something that isn't quite that beautiful. If you're not quite sure what you're looking at here, Each of those little white daisies is a plastic daisy in a metal pipe that's been drilled into the tree, because you can see how much more beautiful that is than just the tree with the stub cuts. All this needs to correct it is one cut, right at the soil level. Take the thing out, turn it into firewood, make it into something good. Pruning is key. We could spend a whole day talking about pruning practices, but my advice to all of my clients is anything other than a shrub pruning or whatever, do not hire a tree service. All that means is you own a chainsaw, you have a truck, and there's a magnetic sign on the door that says tree service. And my comparison is I'm probably allowed to buy dental surgery tools. But there's a certain thing about qualifications before you pick up the tools. And certified arborists know what they're doing, and the rest of them kind of hit and miss. So do your homework and look for the label. Again, there's more formal types of gardens, but generally I think most of us are attracted to gardens that feel more natural. So wherever we can, setting up something like a natural system, something that's in balance with itself, that has seasonality, where plants don't need a tremendous amount of care, that attracts pollinators and provides habitat. That's a natural system that we don't have to mess with as much unless we want to go have some fun in there. So we're trying to create natural systems. Okay, I'm not sure if you can make out that slide, but I think it speaks for itself. Guys, right? What is it about tools and guys? So here we see a riding mower hanging from a crane trying to take the top off a hedge. That's too high because somebody bought a plant that wants to be 30 feet high, and now they're trying to convince it to only be 10 feet high. So this is the stuff that'll get you in trouble. Speaking of dumb gardens costing money, so here's another example of it. We grow lantana here, right? It's probably not, is it annual? Is it an annual plant or no? It persists? Wonderful, good for you. Where we are, where plants grow 24/7, some of these lantana will get 5-6 feet across. Same sort of thing here when they're in a good spot. So in my neighborhood, somebody convinced the owner to plant 3 rows in a 5-foot wide parking strip, some of them 6 inches off the side, ignoring the fact that these plants are going to, grow and grow and grow. And sure enough, to predict, this is a few months later, and it's still okay, but when you go by now, it basically looks like the deck of an aircraft carrier with a couple of colorful sprinkles on top, like cake decorating. Same example here with a white lantana. There's 4 of them in this little 5-foot strip, and the gardener doesn't know any more than just chop. So we're cutting down, and what do you end up with? All the little woody sticks in there and a little frosting on the top. So understanding your plants, knowing how big they're going to be, giving them the space to do their thing, much more beautiful, a lot less work, a lot less money. Sustainable landscaping. There was a study out where I am of a traditional landscape, because we all espouse that sustainable gardens are going to cost you less money, et cetera, et cetera. And City of Santa Monica said, let's prove it. And they took a number of traditional type gardens and compared them to more sustainably designed gardens. And these are the kind of numbers they came up with. The amount of water use, 100% difference. The amount of yard waste they produce, the amount of labor that it takes to maintain them. So you not only get a more beautiful natural style garden, but it takes care of itself and costs you a lot less. Just because you own the tools doesn't mean you get to use them. This is one of my favorite stories. I dropped my wife off at work. I've got the camera in the car. I'm going to go into some neighborhood in my area that I haven't been through in a while, looking for crimes against horticulture. Yes, we go out looking for them. This is Loropetalum. Beautiful plant, soft, lacy. There's some great ones downstairs at the show for you to see, but it's just a fabulous plant. I'm driving my car and I'm seeing this guy who's even more out of shape than I am, huffing and puffing on his bike coming up through the hills, and I'm thinking to myself, good for you. You're out there, you're getting some exercise, doing the right thing. I'm driving a little further and I see these Loropetalum. And I get out of the car and I'm down on one knee about to take the picture, and guess which person on their bicycle pulls into the driveway? It's my friend going up, and he gets off his bike and he looks over at me and I'm going, oh geez. And he gets this big smile on his face and he says, what do you think? Because, here's somebody taking a picture of his garden. I said, that's really interesting. I just took kind of a neutral tone. So these are Quonset huts. They're flat on the side, arched on the top. They're all uniform. Great if you're making a parapet at the top of your castle. Not so much along the street, I think. But I'm okay with some pruning, because if you're having fun and you know what you're doing and you're keeping the plants alive, more power to you. That's the fun stuff. I'm really down on lawns. I was invited last month. I mentioned I was in, I was going to say Ventura. That's in my community. I was in Virginia, and I was asked to do a workshop with professionals on murdering your lawn. And I was a little panicky because we're right next to the bluegrass state. But a lot of compelling reasons other than just water use to minimize our lawns, or at least treat them properly. If your lawn does something for you, if you're into nude sunbathing and you don't want to lay on gravel or junipers or whatever, that's fine. But there's not a lot of other excuses, because the kids are in the house and they're just playing with the video games. So we want to try to downsize, want to create more natural type systems, and own our lawns responsibly. Watch out for the chemical fertilizers. Watch out for what runs off your property when it rains and carries all of that stuff into the creeks and the rivers and all of that. So there's some downsides to lawns, but they are sort of pretty. Okay, I already said we want our gardens to be useful. So when we go outside, make it work for you. Create spaces where you want to live, where you want to spend some time. Eat your garden. All these opportunities to grow fresh fruit, and you'll find a lot of them downstairs in the exhibit hall. A lot of people with things for your edibles, and there's no reason you have to just have a little plot where you're growing the vegetables. There's a lot of stuff that integrates beautifully into your ornamental beds and coexists just fine. Have you seen these? Are they around? These are pretty amazing. If you don't have a lot of space, it's like a percolator. There's a tub at the bottom with nutrient-filled water, sort of like hydroponics. There's a pump that moves the water up, and it rains down on the roots of the plants that are in these little pockets. You've seen strawberry containers where you plant them in on the sides. Same sort of thing, and these produce enough. One tower produces enough food for a family of 4, greens and vegetables and stuff like that. Fabulous. They're called aeroponic tower gardens. And the last is, we crave natural beauty. I think it's why we're all here. The formal gardens of England and some of the other areas are becoming a little bit more passé, and there's a reason we don't see something like this on the cover of Fine Gardening magazine. We're looking for plants that look like they belong there. So the way to do that, observe how nature works. Spend some time in the mountains. Spend some time out in the fields. Look how natural systems create themselves and try to take some lessons away from that. So what are we doing here? How do you up your design? How do you become a better designer, a more conscientious garden owner? Some of the things you can do: expand your resources. You're here today, you're learning things. There's a lot you'll learn from the exhibits downstairs. Read your favorite garden blogs, subscribe to magazines. Anybody here getting the new reborn version of Garden Design magazine? It was a fabulous magazine years ago. It's sort of turned into more of a lifestyle magazine, and it's back full guns, one of the most luscious, beautiful to look at, and also practical garden magazines. Check out GD, Garden Design, and a website that's just filled with all sorts of fabulous free stuff. Take classes through extension, through adult education. Nurseries put on talks every once in a while. So, find something that you love, a rose society, whatever floats your boat, whatever keeps you active in the garden. Get involved with that. Take the classes. Team up with other people with like interests, and share it with them. Whole list of things here. I'm not going to take our time because we've got a whole lot of fun. But, commit to your garden, learn something new, bring it back to your garden with you. I like it because this is my teaching method. I have college students, and they're showing me all the gardens that they like and bringing in pictures and things. And I think that in order to create a beautiful garden that you love, you need to do a few things. You need to understand what it is that you like. Okay, it's like a police lineup. I could show you a whole bunch of different gardens, and certain ones are just really gonna get your blood pressure going. Is it enough to just say, I like this garden, or can you say, I like it because, and then understand the design principles that make it beautiful to you? So we're going to spend a little bit of time going through some of that stuff. Again, you'll find more in my book. I didn't mean for this to be a Popeil commercial, but just sort of occurred to me here. When I look at a garden, I look at all of these different things that are going on in terms of visual design. The harmony and the contrast in the garden. You know, color schemes. When we get dressed to go out, we have a theme in mind. When we put a meal together, there's a theme in mind. You're probably not doing a Chinese pork roast with sardines in it. You know, there's certain things that go together. So look at these different design aspects. Where's the harmony and the contrast? What's the color scheme that's going on? What are the forms and shapes that work together that are exciting you? All of these, every plant that you look at when it's combined with another plant starts a conversation with that other plant. Why this plant looks good with this is something very personal to you. And the more you understand these design principles, you can look at a garden and say, oh, I understand why I like this. Here's what's going on. You can bring that back to your own garden. So how do you pick plants? You go to the nursery. The theme I use is purchase with purpose. When you buy a plant, you can just base it on ooh shiny. This is pretty. It's got flowers that match the linens on my dining table, or we can take it a few steps further. So I have a 4-step process for choosing plants. First thing I do is I think, are there plants that can do something for me, do something for my garden? What are some of the things plants do from a functional point of view? Provide shade. That's it. Okay, that's all plants do. Screening. They provide food. What else? Habitat, all of that sort of stuff. So as you start thinking about re-landscaping or doing something new in your garden, or if you're starting from scratch, we start with what can these plants do for me? They can reduce erosion, provide habitat, shade, screening, all that sort of thing. That's job one. Because if you're going to buy a plant, you may as well get something more out of it than just the nice leaves on your maple. Second step is which category, and I'll tell you what the categories are, does this plant belong to? I divide the whole plant world into 4 categories. You're either a tree, you're high, you're medium, or you're low. And when I start a garden design, it's just based on, well, I need something tall here because I don't want to see the neighbor's house. I need something low here because I want to be able to see through the garden. Need a tree here for shade. It doesn't matter yet what flavor that plant is. Whether it's blue or green or plaid, I need it to do a certain job, to hide the fence, etc. So that's the second step, is what category does the plant fall into? Now the key one, and it's not easy if you don't have a good horticultural background, but there's resources out there, there's intelligent people working in the nurseries, there's extension, there's books that can tell you what it takes for a plant to grow successfully in a certain location in your garden. Because as you know, the east side of your house is a very different growing condition than the hotter afternoon sun in the west. Some of us have sandy soils, clay soils. All of those things are key to having plants that are going to thrive with little or no extra attention from you. And isn't that the ideal? If you could put a plant in the ground and never have to mess with it, unless you wanted to do some nice pruning or something, it'd be nice to have the plants not be on life support all the time. So getting the right plant in the right place, and that includes its mature size. Okay, we don't want to be putting we don't want to be putting Rottweilers in a space where only a Chihuahua should fit. So understanding all of these things, the cultural needs of the plant, and getting that right is what creates beautiful, useful, sustainable gardens. Then, the last thing, and this is what usually surprises people, the ooh shiny. Because if the plants pass all these tests, if it does something for you, you've got the right size plant in the right place, you've matched its growing conditions, now go have fun. There's the Southern Living Garden Book. It's filled with thousands of plant listings. You can't have all of those. They're not all going to grow in your area, and for a whole lot of reasons. So you start with this massive pantry of plants, and we want to cook it down to those things that are really going to do well in our garden. And when we've got all those ingredients left, then we make a nice meal out of it. We create the visual effect. So try to follow that order. It's in your handout. So when we talk about, well, I'm going to race through this. When we talk about plant functions, these are some of the things we already talked about. I forgot I had these slides in here. I thought I had to do it all on the last one. We have the different categories of plants, and trees come in all different sizes, as you know, from big skyline trees to ones that are nice just next to a small patio. We've got all the high plants that provide the background. They act as privacy and screening and security. The medium plants, that's everything from the more vigorous perennials to the shrubby material, and then all the low-growing stuff, the ground covers, the annuals, perennials, the tulips that come up, etc. So this is what a first planting plan looks like for me. This is the conceptual planting plan. I'll walk you through it really quickly here. Here's the driveway, here's the footprint of the house, front door, walkway coming up, backyard with a little patio, veggie garden in the back, and a little quiet place to sit and read a book. Nice garden? So how do we figure out what the plants are going to be? Well, I need some tall stuff around the edges, screen some views, I want some shade in certain areas, strategic areas. Oh, I've got a hot tub down here. I'm putting some small fruit trees around the front, and I've got low plants here, visible from the street. This is my good neighbor policy. And then I've got some medium-sized stuff, because when I'm sitting here on the porch, I'd like a little separation between me and the rest of the world out there. And then I've got some low stuff on the inside that I can look at from inside the house. So what we're doing here, I'm not going to belabor this, is creating, call it a topo map of your garden, the high, the medium, the low. In a simple world, every high plant would be plant A, all your medium plants would be plant B, C, and D. We would just use one plant to do everything, but later I'll show you how that gets more complex. So do we agree that this is kind of a way to approach a new section of your garden? Just thinking in terms of the mass and the space. That's really all it is. There's either stuff there or it feels more open. So then we get to the cultural, all the different aspects that we have to keep in mind in terms of keeping the plants alive. And the last is all the visual characteristics. We have everything from the style of the plant, and that's very subjective. Some of us might look at a plant and say, oh, I would only use that in a woodland style garden. Somebody else makes it work very nicely in a contemporary garden. That's kind of up to you. Do the plants you're going to use, are the plants that you're going to use going to fit the style of garden? And then these other things. As soon as we put one plant next to another, we are creating composition. So the forms of plants, something open and wispy next to something that's dark and dense, these are all things that we can create. When I said I want to be able to say I like this because, this is the vocabulary we go to understand how these plant combinations work. How we mass the plants to create either something very informal or something a little bit more formal, to create a sense of openness like a meadow. Need to understand the color wheel. The best investment you can do is to go to an art supply store and get one of those little paint mixing color wheels that explain to you things like warm colors and cool colors. When you look at a color scheme in a garden, ask yourself first, is it mainly warm? The yellows, the oranges, the reds? Is it predominantly cool? The greens, the purples, the blues? We have tints and shades. When we take red and we add white to it, what do we get? Pink. Pink is the tint of red. When we take red and we add black to it, what do we get? Usually fewer answers. Maroon. Okay? Your jacket right here. So if I take your maroon jacket and I put it next to your pink blouse and I leave the red out, we've got this very sophisticated warm color scheme going on because we've got the lightest end of red, the darkest end of red. These are the ways that you understand the gardens that you're looking for. So spend a little time with the color wheel and up your game a little bit. So we have warm colors, cool colors. We have analogous color schemes. Those are colors that are similar to each other, the red, yellow, and orange. And then we can look at a composition like this, I hope you all like this, and break it down. This is a warm color scheme. It's analogous, meaning everything here is based on orange, or some variation on orange, forget the green. When we add dark to orange, we get the coppery and brown colors. We've got them here, but when we lighten it, we get more toward the yellows. We've got, it's hard to tell in this room, we're not quite dark enough. This is peach-colored flowering maple, and this is fuchsia back here. So what I'm getting at here is the more you understand some of these design principles, you can look at a garden like this and say, well, I can't grow any of these plants here, but now I understand what's going on. I'm going to find plants that want to be in my garden, and I'm going to substitute something that grows here to achieve a look like this. Now for the final picking of plants. I call it the core of 4, because it rhymes. So imagine you're doing your entire garden. We talked about trees, high, medium, and low. Still with me on that? Let's imagine, to make things easier, that you only get to choose one plant from each category and that's your garden. Does it seem achievable that aesthetically you can come up with a 4-plant combination that makes you happy? That seems pretty straightforward. I mean, a typical front yard, backyard landscape can have dozens of plants in it by the time you're done. Most of us can't sit down and just give birth to a 20-plant palette off the top of our head, so sneaking up on it using the core of 4 I find to be really a helpful exercise. So imagine you only get to use one tree, one high, one medium, one low. Yes, pretty skimpy, but we're going to build on it from there, because all you have to do next, notice when I use the phrase all you have to do, I've just made it really simple. All you have to do is build a nuclear generator. All you have to do. Anyway, I'm going to make it sound, it is relatively simple. So here's the core of 4. This is illustrated in my book. So imagine you only get one tree and you choose dogwood. It's got, in this case, pink flowers. They've got the 4 petals on the foliage. It's got sort of horizontal branching, a little bit of an open-looking tree. We're all in agreement on that. So now I need a high plant that I'm going to pair with it. I'm going to go with Philadelphus, mock orange. White flowers, almost the identical shape, but smaller. So what am I using? I'm using the principle of harmony. 2 plants that share a common attribute, paired together for whatever makes sense to you. There's no right and wrong here. If you like it, that's fine. If you want sardines in your chocolate shake, go for it. Don't offer me any. My 3rd plant, my medium plant, I want to shake things up, but I'm using pink here. What if I go to a burgundy color in the foliage? I'm still harmonious in terms of the color family, but really shaking things up, adding a nice little bonus. And for my low-growing plant, I'm going to use a fountain grass because it's kind of wispy and there's a slight little pink tinge to it. If I absolutely had to, or if this were a small garden, or if you had to, could you live with this 4-plant combination as the only plants that you get? And maybe you've got 20 of these and 8 of these and 4 of those and a couple of trees, but that's all you get. That's all you've got in the pantry. You're going to make a meal out of that. Achievable? Could everybody here with a little bit of research and help come up with a 4-plant palette for somewhere in your garden? I'm seeing a lot of vertical. I like that. Okay, so what do you do next? All you have to do is find a companion for that one plant. Forget everything else. What goes with, finger quotes, goes with my dogwood? I like a European birch. The white is going to open things up a little bit, brighten things, the vertical structure, it's a little wispy. Now I'm using contrast. There's very little that's similar about my dogwood and my birch tree, so I'm adding an element of contrast to this. I'm not going to go over every plant here, but lilac is the plant that I'm pairing with my mock orange. I'm using a feather reed grass to complement the barberry, and that says low plant number 1, it should say 2. I'm using some kind of hosta for my other plants. So I've just gone from 4 plants to an 8-plant palette just by thinking about one more plant. You can continue going if you want to and build the plant palette, and I will tell you that once we get out to column 642, the relationship between the tree and that tree is going to be kind of off the map. But the key here is you need something to get you started, because once you've made those first few decisions, any other plant you think about, you think to yourself, does this go with that, yes or no? And you've eliminated a whole bunch of plants that aren't going to work for you. It makes the plant selection process a lot easier. So give core of 4 a try. One of the last things I want to touch on is the idea of plagiarizing. Okay, it's not just for college students. You can plagiarize too. And what I mean by this is when you see a garden that's really beautiful to you, back to the idea of understand why. Use that as a jumping off point. We're not copying that garden. It's highly unlikely you could grow all of those plants in exactly that arrangement in your garden anyway. But you need somewhere to start, right? If you're a poet, you read other poetry. If you're an artist, you go to art galleries. If you're going to be a garden designer or you just want to do it for yourself, it helps to turn off my watch that's beeping. So let's do a little plagiarism right here. We have 2 plants. We have acanthus in the background. We have asparagus fern in the foreground. Every plant can be described in a number of ways. So let's describe the acanthus in the back. What is its overall shape and form? Somebody's thinking chunky. I know you're thinking chunky, right? It's a big chunky plant, right? What's the foliage texture? Is it coarse? Yes. It's not fine. It's not medium. It's a coarse textured. So far we have a chunky, coarse textured plant. What's the foliage color? I knew somebody would come up with that. Dark green, right? Dark forest green. So we have a dark green, chunky, broad-leafed, dense plant. We can't see through it. 4 characteristics that we can pick out. What do we match with it? Something that's vertical, something that's wispy, something that's light green, something that's fine textured. High contrast. This is what I mean by plagiarizing. So let's say that here in Arkansas we couldn't grow either of these exact plants, even though we probably can. Could you find something that inspires you that's dark green and sort of big that you could put something light green in front of it? That's how you plagiarize. Same sort of thing going on here. If you can just understand and describe the general characteristics of that plant, you're off and running in terms of getting some inspiration, moving on from there. So your homework. I want you, by the end of this weekend, to just do a little bit of this. You've got your hand out. So you can't say, I forgot my homework. Maybe your dog will eat it, but I don't know. So look at your garden. Ask yourself the big 3. Is it a thing of beauty? Okay. How many of you can look at your garden and say with a straight face, I meant to do this? Those of you who are laughing, it got away from you somehow. You don't know how it happened. It was probably a little bit of Saturday morning syndrome and all that sort of stuff. Ooh, shiny, where do I put this? So assess your garden for just its overall beauty. There's going to be some strong spots that you love, some weak spots, and ask yourself, is there something I can do about this? Just identify the problem areas for you. Okay? Oh, I'm not sure why it says client in there. But is your garden doing anything for you? Can you go out there and live the life you want to live? Would it help if you put in a fire pit or created a shady area where you can sit and read a book? So try to create a garden that's giving back to you, a place that when you open the doors and go outside, it's just more of your living area. And are you using plants that are really happy where they are, or are they on life support all the time? Because sometimes it's those stragglers that allow us to finally, there's a school of thought that plants have feelings and all that. And I think that's just fine. You can insult your plants and just make sure they go in the compost pile so they get resurrected someday. So I think that's the big 3. Look for the beauty, look for the purpose in your garden, and see how well it's taken care of itself. How well does it fit in that sustainability model that we're talking about here? Crimes Against Horticulture now has, we're pushing 6,000 fans at Facebook. If you want to have some fun and you're already at Facebook, click over to Crimes Against Horticulture when Bad Taste Meets Power Tools and join the fun there. And a not-so-veiled threat. I have scouts everywhere. There is a chance somebody's going to drive past your garden. They will have their camera handy, and it's going to show up on the pages of Crimes Against Horticulture. So get busy now. That's why I'm asking you to do this weekend. Save you embarrassment. Okay, that's the book again. Wait, it's going to come back one more time. Okay, so that is my spiel. You've all been indoctrinated. I've taken you all to on my little journey, and now it's your turn. I've got 3 roles up here. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine yourself as one of the snarkier, ruder comics that you've heard. It doesn't have to be rude. We're just going to have some fun here. So here's where we're going. Caption. You all know the term crepe murder? I was so happy and shocked leaving the airport, and as soon as the cabbie got in, we turned the corner, leaving the, I was going to call it the depot. What do we call places where airplanes, terminal, what an ugly term. Okay, we're leaving the terminal and there's this wonderful series of crepe murders out there, but this was the top. Somebody sent me this a while back. We've got the galvanized bucket, we've got the different colors of rock in here, and we've got what's probably 1,000 years of brutality here. So I'm just looking for a snappy little comment that we can put with this. Yes, Mary, in the back.
Those are crap myrtle.
Crap myrtle, okay. Caption, crap myrtle. Can we top crap myrtle? What are my bids? Triple murder. Yeah, we've got a triple homicide going on here. Oh, you know what? I need a recording secretary. I'll have to remember these. Chamber pot. Any others? Okay, so we're going to vote right now. We've got 3 captions up for grabs. We've got crap myrtle, murder, myrtle. Crap myrtles. We've got, okay, so let's hear it for crap murder, myrtles. Applause. We've got triple murder. Clap louder. And we had chamber pot. I think we've got Mary. You're a winner. You want to come up and get it, or we'll save it till the end here? Okay, I cannot explain this. You got it. Now remember, if you're taking the tape, you have an obligation to your neighborhood. Captions. Anybody want to take a shot? Lawn furniture. Bus depot. A streetcar named Bazaar. I think we found our winner. Are you looking for a job? Do you want to come work for the I think I found my first employee. Okay, last one up, I think. Oh, I like that reaction. Any Star Trek fans here? Hint, hint. No, you can't win again, Mary. I'm sorry. You're out of the running. We got to leave it open here. Is it contagious? Nah, anybody else? Pie invasion. Pod, P-O-D, pod invasion. Poodle doodle. Sperm count. Now, I didn't mention, but the closer we are to bathroom humor, usually the higher the rating. Okay, so we have, is it contagious? We have poodle doodle. What was our third one? Pod invasion. Okay, I think we're going with sperm count. Oh, a little timid audience here. Oh, okay. You guys are great. And actually, I ran out of tape, so we're not going to be able to do this one because anyway, we've got I'm sure we've got some nice Southern belles here in the audience, and we don't want to offend or make anyone blush. But you can kind of imagine where we would go with this. So we'll let you write them down and share them when you go home. What else do we have? I skipped that one. So back to the plug for my book. Quick story. How much time do I have, Mary? About 5. Fine, I won't need all of that. My book started out, okay, I wanted to be somebody who could go out to places like the Arkansas Convention Center and stand in front of a fabulous audience and speak and have people laugh and learn something and take it home and be my disciples. And at the time, I was just speaking in the Santa Barbara area, having a lot of fun. I said, how am I going to get on the big stage? This is the big stage here. You don't know that, but it was to me. I need to write a book because nobody's going to hire Billy Goodnick. It's going to be Billy Goodnick, author of. Okay, I got to write a book. Well, what do I know? I know design. I can't write a design book. Everybody in the world has written fabulous design books. I have no business writing a design book. I've got Crimes Against Horticulture. I'd been blogging for Fine Gardening magazine, blogging locally, writing articles, had this great body of work in the form of 1,000-word essays and blogs. I know what I'll do. I'll take Crimes Against Horticulture with snappy comments, intersperse my essays in between, and by the time you're done reading the book, you'll get some laughs like we did here today, and you'll learn my worldview, and I'll have a book. I write up, with the help of Amy, I write up a book proposal and send it off to all the big book, garden book publishers. And about a month later, I'm calling everyone. They go, you know, we love you. We love your voice. We love your sense of humor. We wouldn't touch this project with a 10-foot pole. They did not like Crimes Against Horticulture. One publisher stayed on, St. Lynn's Press. We bargained that there would be a few pages of Crimes Against Horticulture at the end of it, and the rest of it is kind of the philosophy that you got from me here today. So Crimes Against Horticulture, almost a book. You can get a little bit of it out there. It's in the last few pages of Yards. But what this book is written, who this book is written for are people who want to be better designers on their own, as well as people who are going to end up eventually working with a professional designer, but they want to be fully engaged. They want to start the process having a good idea of what they want, but not necessarily how to get there. There's even sections on how to hire the different professions, who to work with, how to put your team together. Really comprehensive book. Fab reviews at Amazon, all 5-star stuff, so I'm bragging here, patting myself on the back. And one last plea. That's my Cocker Spaniel, and he eats basically based on the royalties off the book. So when sales are up, he's a really happy dog. When not, he's just looking at me and he's, come on, Dad. I was like, no, it's about the book sales. So that's it. I'm all done. I've got a few minutes for some direct questions, and if not, I'll meet you out there. Question?
How has your business, how has your design philosophy changed since California's water restrictions?
How has my design philosophy changed? I'm proud to say it hasn't, because from the time I started working with plants, there's been a series of droughts. It's not just now. So we've had 20-year cycles, and I've been doing this for a few cycles. So from the first time I started working in a nursery, we were having water problems. Drip irrigation was just coming in, low water using plants. So I'm happy to say that I've been sending the message for decades, and this year everybody heard it with water shortages. But yeah, it's an evolving process, and it keeps getting a little bit sharper because I keep learning new stuff, but I've been a hardcore low water use. And what I hear from clients is, well, I want to go low water, but I don't like cactus. Well, there's a whole range of plants that don't need a lot of water. We have 5 Mediterranean climates around the world, from South Africa to Australia to Chile to the Mediterranean to California area. There's plants thriving there with no extra help from anyone. All of those plants can be in our low water using gardens. So it's been a slow evolution. Does that help? Anybody else? Any specific questions? Things you want to know about? My drumming? I can do hand boom. That's about it. Thank you all for coming. Enjoy the show. My 1 o'clock talk, I will forewarn you, although I'd love to have you back in the room at 1 o'clock, you're going to hear a couple of the same jokes probably. I can't help it. And some of the same content, but much more in-depth about design. So I've only touched on the design issues here, a deeper lesson at 1 o'clock. And if you're still around at 6, as my introducer already said, we're going to look at the gardens down there and use them as 3D examples of the design principles. So it's just one more addition. So go home, take a nap, come back at 6. Oh, starting at 5, all kinds of fun stuff. It's called Rock in the Garden. There's going to be live music, there's food demonstrations, a lot of fun stuff. And if you do feel like coming back, Sunday is Kids Day. There's all kinds of great programs for kids. So spread the word, let everybody know about the show. Thank you for coming, and I'll meet you out there if you're interested.